friends, Joe here at Reverb. Welcome to another installment of a warm-up routine video. And this time, I got some warm-up techniques and tricks from Ariel Posen. Ariel is obviously a wonderful player. If you haven't heard him, check him out. He's a wonderful guy, too. One day, he actually helped me move a couch into my apartment, and that's a story for another day. These warm-up videos have been really great, and as you know, if you've followed along, that they all offer something very different. Ariel's routine, it borders on lesson kind of tricks, language technique, as well as just kind of warm-up rhythm and routine. Let's dive in.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that you needed to know the fretboard fully. You know, there is like some foundation, some groundwork that needs to go into it beforehand. There's no cheat codes, no easy way out, no shortcuts. It's all really just putting in the work. But once you put in that work, it really does you good because it just brings you closer from hearing an idea up here and putting it down on the instrument, which is really all of our goal. You know, we're taught how to play these scales. Let's say a major scale, right? Now that's great, but that's 2 octaves of one scale. You know, why do we always learn all these scales? I guess we want to go from the low string to the high string. That's all we need. That's the scale, right? Same with the pentatonic, right? Really, the pentatonic is just that. So we're playing 2 pentatonics and a flat 3. So why not trim the fat? Why not just focus on those notes? So a major scale, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. You should be able to play that, even just that simple shape, on every string in the same key. That was both on the A string, but... In this case, since we're going to do a blues as an example, let's think pentatonic. Now, I know we're taught to go... etc., like the 5 positions of pentatonic. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's more of a muscle memory way to remember these shapes. And I know that guitar playing is very muscle memory based and shape based, but if we just focus on one shape at a time and really, you know, try to remember what those notes are, 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. If you do that on each string in the same key, then you're going to realize that it's a lot easier to connect them. Rather than thinking of the 5 positions of pentatonic, because once you get to know that fretboard, you know, you should put the time in so that when you look at the fretboard, you pick a key, F sharp, okay. It's like they should all light up to you. And there's no talent behind that, it's just time. It's simply just sitting down, testing yourself. Octaves are a great way to work on that. Whatever you need to do to memorize it, that's what's going to help you here. So, you know, you take that with the pentatonic. Eventually, you try to tie them together. So that you're never tied down. You never like, you don't want to be that person that says, yeah, I'm comfortable doing this here and here, but I don't usually do it here. You don't want to be that person. Because like, the guitar's not there to hold us back. It's not to be a barricade in front of us. It's there to serve as a tool so we can get our ideas out. And they're the same ideas you're already playing, just they show up slightly differently. All these mini scales we're doing, do them to a metronome, do them any tempo you want, slow, fast, medium, just anything consistent. And you know what? When you get bored of that, start switching up your fingering. You can go from this And then when you get bored of that, you can... So any way you want. The more the merrier. But don't switch over until you've really gotten the basic one down.
Okay, before we get started, there's something important we got to talk about, and that is a metronome. Metronome, metronome, metronome. I can't say it enough. A couple of these techniques that Ariel showed me deal with practicing to a metronome and warming up to a metronome. You've heard me say this thing in the past. You've probably had other players or teachers suggest using a metronome. I just can't stress enough how much it helps you. Anyways, get a metronome. Pull up another tab on your browser right now. Go to Reverb. There's tons of metronomes. Get one. It'll come to your door in the next couple of days, and then we can continue. If you have to turn on your computer and set up a session and put in a BPM, those are all steps in between you and practicing. Now, many of us learn the minor pentatonic scale, as Ariel says. We learn it in 2 octaves and a minor third. We kind of have that shape, that go-to shape. And what Mr. Posen suggests is trim the fat. And this is a phrase that I use with a lot of stuff, with a lot of my students, whether it's chord theory or scales or stuff. Trim the fat. Take the scale for its essence, for only its parts, only what it's comprised of, the 5 notes of the minor pentatonic scale, and play it in every position that you can, starting from each string, starting in all ranges. Set that metronome at a tempo that you can pull this off, and play it at quarters, play it at eighths, play it at triplets, however you feel. I employed this routine for the last couple of weeks, almost every day, and I started to just increase the BPM of the metronome as I went. And it really shows a lot of things about how you are focused on the discipline of a scale and every position that you can access it in. The last video we did here was Mateus Asato, right? And he gave this really amazing broad minor pentatonic technique. I mean, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's a full-on run separated by string sets. It was very intense. This is kind of an opposite approach. And this is what's so cool about these videos. You can have a very different approach and employ them on different days or in different ways and get kind of the full breadth of language and technique out of this stuff. So Ariel says, trim the fat.
So one thing I'm asked about often is how to play over changes. And when I say play over changes, it's not just playing anything like in terms of improvisation over chords. It's literally outlining the chords in your melody and in your phrasing. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of approaches. You can, there's modes, there's this, there's a lot of things. I try to think of it really simply because I think the less information you take in, the easier it is to put out more information, if that makes sense. This is any genre of music. This is not a blues technique. This is not a blues exercise. I like using the blues because it's just a good example. It's 3 chords, So there's a lot of things to think about first before you even talk about playing changes. First of all, if you're practicing like we are right now, unaccompanied, you got to make sure there's pocket, there's groove behind what you're doing. You don't want to just go 3, 4. It's like, how do you follow along that? You want to make sure you're 3, 4. Now, how do you do that? Practice always to a metronome. Yes. All of this stuff, practice to a metronome. If you hate the sound of a metronome, practice to anything that's consistent. You can target any chord tone. If you're playing a chord, if you're playing a A13, you could target the 1, the flat 7, the 3, the 6, or the 13, the 1, the 9, any of these. But we don't want to just do that. In this case, and for the sake of this exercise, we just want to target the 3 of each chord. Okay. So if we're doing a blues in A, the way I think about it, and the way I want you to think about it is just, we're playing A dominant the entire time. So A minor pentatonic, A major pentatonic. So to play changes, you kind of always got to be thinking ahead. We start a blues, 4 bars, 1, dum, ba-da, the 1, maybe sometimes a 4 right off the top. 1, dum, dum, and 1, 2, the 4. And before that 4 comes, we got to be thinking about that 4 right when we start on the first bar. So if we start, I'm thinking right away, intervallically, what is the 3 of the 4 chord in relation to the root? So what is it?
So if we're in A, we'd be targeting the F sharp, right? The 3 of the D.
Which is the 6 in relation to the 1. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm just... There's the 6. Yeah. And then I'm going to play it on the downbeat, and then I'm going to go back to what I was doing. 3 of the 1. And then what's the 3 of the 5 chord?
The G sharp.
Yeah, which is in
is
relation to the 1.
5, and it'd be the major 7th of the A.
Exactly. So now the 6 kind of works anytime because it's in the major pentatonic. It's not such a distinctive interval that that's really potent, The major 7, when you're playing dominant, is a semitone sharp. So, if you're going to play that natural 7 anywhere else in the song, it might sound kind of out of place unless you're doing a chromatic like... So you just want to be careful that you're not like... Do whatever you want, but for the sake of the exercise, we just want to play that specific interval when the 5 happens. So it's like... If the blues kind of wears thin on you after a while, and you're like, I want to do something else, try another progression, make something up, Go for, you can also do a 1-4-5 in any form. It doesn't have to be a blues. You could do a classic Blink-182, like 1-5-6 minor 4 even. Though any progression works with this approach. You just need to know, okay, what's my root? What's my tonic? That's the key I'm playing in. Obviously, if you're playing to a track... Obviously, if you're playing with a band, you can target any interval. You don't have to just play the 3rd. And sometimes you don't even have to target a chord tone. But for the sake of the exercise, hit as many chord tones as you can. Just assume that you're playing to a listener who's never heard a 12-bar blues and you want to spell it out as obviously as you can for them.
Warm-up number 2 deals with playing over changes. So this is the part of the warm-up that is, as much a lesson as it is kind of a warm-up. And it deals with improvisation, but setting some parameters to kind of control the way or inform the way that you are improvising. Because who says that improvising can't be part of your warm-up? Some warm-up routines are very rigid, very strict, go through the arpeggio in 3 octaves like Corey Wong taught us to do. Mateus taught us to separate string sets and connect the 5 positions of the minor pentatonic. That's all cool, very methodical. This second warm-up routine from Ariel is kind of open. It's expressive. So it's all about targeting the thirds. Okay, so the blues is a great example because we have 3 chords, and a blues is a form that we're all pretty familiar with, and so we have 1, 4, and 5. The downbeat of each chord change land on the 3rd of that chord. So a blues in A, we have chords A, D, and E. The 3rd of A is C sharp, the 3rd of D is F sharp, and the 3rd of E is G sharp. Now, targeting those thirds on every chord change really allows the listener to grab on to the harmonic structure. more so, like Ariel points out, more so than the fifth, and maybe even more so than the root. So it's a very powerful quality of the chord. In fact, it determines the quality of the chord, as you know. Also, this was very useful for me because we want to improvise. We want to be able to get to a point where we can play kind of through changes freely and not overthink things too much, right? This was like a really great exercise because it's a balance of being able to improvising, playing, lines around all these chords, but you just kind of have this one rule, this kind of one parameter that you've set for yourself. You've kind of boxed yourself in one dynamic of the exercise, and everywhere else you're kind of free to roam.
Understanding harmony, it can just be on a basic level, and thinking of everything in intervals or intervallically really helped me along the way, because what that did was just take everything that's music. I studied theory, I studied harmony, I can read, I understand key signatures, all these things. But if we think of everything specifically as notes, like A, C, E flat, whatever, that's fine, but it actually works your brain a lot harder when you're transposing and trying to do something in a different key. We'll use a blues as an example today, but if we were playing a blues in A, the 1 is the A, the 4 is the D, 5 is the E. If I said, okay, now let's do it in C sharp now, rather than going, okay, so now it's C sharp and then it's F sharp is the 4, G sharp is the 5. It kind of hurts my brain even thinking about it, even though it's such a simple thing. If you think about it intervallically, the numbers always stay the same. And the relation between the notes where they show up is always the same. None of that changes. And the same is with, ear training. Ear training is another thing which is just as important, because that can lead us into playing changes, because we need to identify which intervals we're targeting. You can get an app, anyone, off the App Store. There's like 1 million of them, whichever one has a good rating. Test yourself. Do it when you're out for a walk. Do it when you're making dinner. Do it when you're, running errands. Basically, it'll play you a tone or a key, let's say, and then it'll give you an interval on top of that. So it'll go. So eventually you'll go, oh, that's a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the more you can do this without your guitar, the better. Because if you can start identifying intervals without an instrument, then you can listen to music. You can be listening to a record and hear and go, man, that's a great lick. What is that? Oh, wait a minute. It's 5, 4, 3, flat 3, 1. And it's not perfect pitch. It's just strengthening your ear.
Ash, do you want to? I'll close my eyes. You give me 2 or 3, and I'll give you 2 or 3.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right.
Okay, here we go. Here's your key.
6th.
Good. You want me to change keys? I'll change keys.
Yeah, change keys.
Okay.
Minor 3.
Yeah.
Okay, one more.
Okay.
Sharp 4.
You aced it.
11. Okay, nice.
Flat 7.
Nice.
4.
You got it. All right, one more.
6.
6. Hey, you got
Man, I was nervous. I'm like feeling the breath.
I was too. That's great. That's super
But
fun
isn't it-
stuff. So helpful.
But you aced it. You've put the time in, obviously. It's so helpful to like identify intervals, because you can actually, you hear it. It's like you see it. When you played each interval, for me, like I kind of just see it on the guitar.
Yeah.
For those of you that start getting an ear trainer app, like don't practice this with a guitar. As much as you can do it without your guitar, the better, because it's essentially just cheating. If you hear a note and then you try to find it, that defeats the whole purpose. But if you think about the fretboard and you think about those shapes that you know, those basic scales, that should help guide you to find those notes. And eventually, the more you do it, the more you're just going to recognize those sounds, and you're going to be listening to your favorite songs that you've listened to 1,000,000 times, and you're going to be like, huh, so that thing is just 6, 1, 3, you know? whatever it was, you know, like you just start visualizing music, and it's a beautiful thing.
Okay, the third warm-up routine technique is all about ear training. Ear training is massive. Being able to identify intervals is one of the most powerful tools that you can put in your bag. Okay, I really like the way that Ariel spoke about it, because he said, like, even while you're cooking dinner, or while you're taking the dog for a walk or whatever, like there's ear training that you can be doing. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it. Of course, there are apps. One of my students uses an app called Interval Ear Training, and that seemed to be a really good interface and just like a really good platform to learn this stuff. But what we're doing here is we are understanding the relationship between intervals, and when we do this, it allows us to be able to pull these intervals off in soloing more. It allows us to be able to hear a song, a progression, and say, oh, that I know what that is. That's 1, 3 minor, 4 major, back to 1. It allows for so many things to open up in the dynamic of your playing. When you work on it, you get better and better at it. Your chord theory becomes more knowledgeable, and the way that you visualize your instrument becomes just kind of like more ingrained. Once again, thanks for following along with these warm-up routine videos. They're super fun, and they allow me to, get some really good stuff from these really great players, and try it out on myself, and then share it with you. And I've gotten great responses from a lot of you out there messaging and say, like, I did this routine. It's done this. It's done X, Y, and Z. It's made me this much better. I just really enjoy it. And so thanks for watching. Thank you, Ariel Posen, for sharing the goods with us. We'll be watching for you, whatever you're doing. And thanks again, everybody. Joe from Reverb. See you next time.